Last week on Legally Kidnapped.
Good evening. Our top story this week. The state of New York launches an investigation into the salaries and other compensation at nonprofit agencies where about 2,000 workers are being paid more than $100,000 a year. In California this week, the Los Angeles County Child Protective Industry is resisting a legislative probe into the deaths of children under their care, with county supervisors even going as far as defying a subpoena for the records in these child deaths. Then the LA County Child Welfare Chief gets fed up and quits, being the third to do so in the last 9 months. And the head of an anti-poverty agency in Ventura County gets a month-long doctor-ordered stress-related leave after a 3-story foster home deal in downtown Ventura falls through. The state of Florida accepts $2.5 million from Obamacare for its abstinence-only sex education programs, but blocks other healthcare reforms from entering the state, thus losing out on $50 million in federal funding for child abuse prevention programs. And the DCF Secretary, David Wilkins, vows to keep children safe despite all of the cutbacks the state is making. In Illinois, the great battle between God and the gays heats up as the ACLU decides to take on Catholic charities over the gay rights issue, effectively leaving the futures of 2,200 foster kids in limbo. And a foster parent says that the state is treading on her religious beliefs. In Louisiana, an investigative report finds that juvenile detention facilities are drugging kids with psych meds in order to keep them docile. And the state approves a $2 an hour hazardous duty pay supplement for CPS agents who steal children. A legislative hearing begins in Nebraska over their failed attempts to privatize the state's child welfare system. And Connecticut claims it has a plan to reduce the use of group homes for foster kids. In South Carolina this week, the new DSS director wants to speed up the adoption process and put more children into permanent families. But some are concerned of the unintended side effects of this and are claiming that the plan is more of an effort to boost numbers than to do what's best for kids. A group of foster kids converges on Capitol Hill to challenge Congress on accountability in child welfare. A new study finds that there are no healthy food commercials targeting kids. New Jersey wants more child abuse rats to come forward. And it's Debtors Prison for any father who can't pay their child support in the state of New Jersey. In Ireland this week, the child protective industry is ignoring hundreds of reports of child abuse due to heavy workloads and understaffing. And Irish social workers are claiming that the HSE is blocking appointments to vacant positions. A mother from Guatemala is demanding the return of her stolen daughter from an American couple who eventually adopted her. Russian investigators want to investigate the possible abuse of a Russian orphan in Norway. The Prime Minister of New Zealand says that there's no quick solution to the country's child welfare issues. And a new political party comes out against New Zealand's anti-smacking law. In Australia this week, hundreds of blue card carrying people who work with kids have been caught committing crimes against children. Child advocates in Tasmania are worried about the drive to reunite foster children with their families due to budget cuts. And budget cuts are also hindering the state's efforts to transfer foster children from state care to the privately run children's charities. Canada continues its long-held tradition of snatching First Nations children this week. A rally is held in Ontario demanding ombudsman oversight of the child protective industry. More Canadians are forced to go to court without lawyers these days. And a 16-year-old boy gets a year in jail for beating the living shit out of a social worker at his group home. In England this week, social workers are warned against misusing social media such as Facebook and Twitter. The UK is housing sex offenders with vulnerable young girls in a state-funded residential program designed to teach them how to live safely. A child protection official with the Catholic Church is caught with child porn. The number of stolen kids in Somerset County's foster care system has increased by 25% since 2009. The leader of the Baby P failures is going to get £1 million after challenging her sacking. A British watchdog group issues a damning report into the Waltham Forest child protective industry, and their leader gets mad and quits his job. In entertainment news this week, singer Amy Winehouse was in the process of adopting a girl from the Caribbean when she died. Mel Gibson is demanding more daddy time with his little one, and the ex-wife of Val Kilmer has established a lien on the actor's property in an effort to get him to pay up after he failed to pay his child support. In Colorado, 2 lesbians are charged with isolating an adopted 6-year-old boy, locking her in her room and causing injuries, including a broken arm and broken fingers. A woman from Florida gets 11 and a half years for abusing 2 kids who she adopted, even though she says she never meant to hurt them. A Florida man gets 4 years for abusing a disabled teenager at a group home. And a California social worker pleads no contest to child porn possession. A foster parent from Michigan gets 15 years for sexually abusing a young girl in his care. A man from New Mexico gets 30 years for raping his foster daughter. A 16-year-old foster kid from New Jersey is charged with stabbing his foster father to death. A 14-year-old Florida girl dies after being shot in the neck by her 17-year-old foster sister after a fight over a cell phone. In Kentucky, a CPS agent is indicted for falsifying records. In Michigan, the trial begins for a mother who fought back against police and CPS agents who were trying to snatch her kid in order to force her onto psych meds, and her lawyers are attacking the validity of the court order that the police used to forcibly enter her home. In Missouri, the grandmother of a young drowning victim is fighting to get her family back after the death was ruled as an accident. A New York judge who wants to keep the case closed won't approve a law firm's bid to help in the investigation of a missing foster kid. In Ohio, children's private records are found outside a recycling bin and made public, and a mother from Oregon loses a custody battle against her ex-husband and his first wife, who killed her own kids back in 1991. In Pennsylvania, 6 teenagers escape from a group home and get caught fleeing in a stolen limousine. In Washington, an adopted 13-year-old dies in her backyard from hypothermia when she wasn't allowed back in the house. 2 kids from Utah turn in their older brother for child abuse. Police and CPS agents in Florida are on the hunt for a real mother who skipped state with her 5-month-old. A pissed-off parent from Miami is arrested after he delivers a headbutt to a DCF agent who stormed in to snatch his kid. And finally, tonight in Wisconsin, a 6-year-old who is accused of first-degree sexual assault for playing doctor with a 5-year-old girl will have his charges dropped after he participates in 6 months of counseling. For these stories and all the latest dirt on the child protective industry, visit www.legallykidnapped.com. And until next week, this is Baby LK, over and out.